Welcome to Daily Stoic Practice, your compass to navigate the complexities of modern life with ancient wisdom. Silence, so often praised as golden, can sometimes become a heavy chain holding us back. It's easy to believe that staying quiet will keep the peace or help us sidestep conflict. But here's a tough truth. Silence isn't always neutral. In the wrong moments, it can enable harm, fuel injustice, and leave wounds that linger far longer than words ever could. Imagine this. A friend is unfairly blamed for something they didn't do. You know the truth, but instead of speaking up, you stay quiet thinking it's not your place, or maybe you're afraid of the backlash. That silence, it doesn't just protect your comfort, it becomes complicated. Life often puts us in situations where speaking up feels risky. Maybe it's at work, when a colleague is mistreated, or at home, when long-standing family traditions clash with your values. In these moments, choosing silence isn't harmless, it's a choice. And sometimes it's the wrong one. So today we're going to talk about 5 situations where staying silent betrays your integrity, your values, and even your relationships. Through the lens of Stoic philosophy, we'll uncover why courage, honesty, and clarity matter so much, and how finding your voice can transform not just your life, but the lives of those around you. But before we dive in, let me pause to say thank you. Your support makes these conversations possible. If you're new here, welcome. Your engagement helps us grow a community rooted in wisdom, action, and self-mastery. Ready to explore the power of your voice? Let's get started. First, honesty. It's such a simple concept, yet in practice, it can feel like walking a tightrope over a pit of discomfort and fear. When faced with the choice to speak up or stay silent, especially in situations that could stir conflict, we often choose silence. Not because we don't value honesty, but because we're afraid of what honesty might cost us. But here's the thing. Choosing silence in these moments isn't just about avoiding awkwardness. It's about actively stepping away from your own principles. And when you do that, you don't just compromise the truth, you compromise yourself. Stoic philosophy reminds us that honesty is non-negotiable when it comes to living a life of integrity. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. But what he didn't need to say, because it's so obvious once you think about it, is this. Withholding the truth can be just as harmful as speaking a lie. I remember a situation that tested my commitment to honesty in ways I wasn't prepared for. I was in a meeting where a senior colleague was presenting a report. On the surface, everything looked polished and professional. But as I reviewed the data, I spotted several glaring inaccuracies. These weren't intentional errors, just oversights, but they could have led to major issues if left uncorrected. As I glanced around the room, I realized I wasn't the only one who noticed. The expressions on people's faces said it all. Yet no one said a word. The silence felt heavy, like an invisible wall that was growing taller and thicker with every passing second. And here's the part I'm not proud of. At first, I joined in that silence. My mind raced with excuses. It's not my responsibility. What if I embarrass them? What if they think I'm being difficult? But then a different thought broke through the noise in my head. If I stay silent, I'm allowing a mistake to move forward. I'm betraying not only the truth, but my own integrity. And so, with a deep breath, I spoke up. I pointed out the errors as respectfully as I could, framing my comments as suggestions for improvement rather than criticisms. The initial reaction was tense. No one likes being told they've made a mistake, especially in front of others. But as the discussion unfolded, something amazing happened. The team began to engage with the feedback, correcting the errors, and ultimately strengthening the report. What could have been a minor disaster turned into an opportunity for growth, simply because someone was willing to address the issue. That experience taught me something profound. Honesty isn't just about pointing out what's wrong. It's about caring enough to want things to be right. It's about fostering clarity, strengthening trust, and ensuring that the foundations we build, whether they're personal relationships, professional projects, or community efforts, are solid and true. Of course, being honest isn't always easy. It requires courage, especially in moments where the stakes feel high or when the truth might make you unpopular. But the Stoics remind us that virtue isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be worth it. Courage and honesty go hand in hand because it takes bravery to face discomfort for the sake of doing what's right. And let's not confuse honesty with bluntness. Being honest doesn't mean being harsh or unkind. It means expressing the truth with care and respect. If you frame your honesty as a way to help rather than a way to criticize, people are much more likely to receive it positively. For example, instead of saying, "This report is full of mistakes," you could say, "I noticed a few things that might need tweaking. Can we take a closer look together?" The goal is not to attack, but to contribute. The consequences of silence, however, can be far more damaging than any temporary awkwardness honesty might create. Silence in the face of falsehood allows mistakes to grow unchecked. It erodes trust over time because eventually the truth comes out, and when it does, people will wonder why you didn't speak up. So, the next time you find yourself in a moment where the truth is needed, pause and ask yourself, what am I risking by speaking up? And what am I risking by staying silent? The answers might surprise you. Speaking the truth may feel uncomfortable in the moment, but it builds trust, respect, and integrity in the long run. And isn't that worth far more than a fleeting sense of ease? Honesty, especially when it's difficult, is a powerful act of self-respect. It says, I value the truth, and I value myself enough to stand by it. That's not just integrity, it's courage in action. The Stoics teach us that a virtuous life isn't about perfection. It's about striving to align our actions with our principles. And honesty, that's where it all begins. So what truths are you holding back? What conversations are you avoiding because they feel too uncomfortable? Take a moment to reflect and then ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be, the one who stays silent or the one who stands for what's right? The choice, as always, is yours. Injustice isn't just an abstract concept we read about in history books or hear about on the news. It's real, raw, and corrosive, chipping away at the very foundations of trust, dignity, and fairness in our lives. It seeps into our workplaces, our relationships, and our communities, often going unchecked because of one powerful enabler: silence. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." Think about that for a moment. When harm festers in one corner of our community, it doesn't stay isolated. It grows, spreads, and eventually touches everyone, including those who thought staying silent would keep them safe. And yet, we all know the feeling. The knot in your stomach when you witness injustice, but hesitate to act. Maybe you've told yourself it wasn't your business. Maybe you were afraid of retaliation, afraid of being labeled a troublemaker, or simply unsure of what to say. These fears are human, but they're also dangerous. They keep us locked in a cycle of inaction, allowing harm to flourish unchecked. Let me share a moment from my own life, a lesson I learned the hard way. Early in my career, I watched as a colleague was blamed for a mistake they didn't commit. It wasn't a small thing, It damaged their reputation and cast a shadow over their work. And here's the thing, I knew the truth. I had the power to speak up, to set the record straight, but I didn't. I told myself it wasn't my place, that it wasn't worth the risk to my own position. So I stayed silent. At the time, I thought I was protecting myself, but in reality, I was betraying my values and my colleagues' dignity. The guilt stayed with me, a constant reminder of the cost of inaction. I realized too late that silence in the face of injustice isn't neutrality, it's complicity. By choosing comfort over courage, I had allowed harm to prevail. But here's what I've come to understand. Fighting injustice doesn't always require grand, dramatic gestures. You don't need to stand on a soapbox or lead a movement to make a difference. Sometimes it's the small acts that matter most. Speaking the truth in a tense meeting, standing beside someone who's being unfairly criticized, refusing to laugh along when someone makes an inappropriate joke. These seemingly small moments create ripples that can lead to bigger changes. The Stoics teach us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to act in spite of it. It's about standing firm when your heart is racing, when your palms are sweaty, and when your voice trembles. Courage is knowing the risk and choosing to speak up anyway, because the alternative, staying silent, is far worse. So the next time you witness injustice, ask yourself, is my comfort more important than someone else's dignity? The answer may not be easy, but it will always be clear. By speaking up, you're not just challenging harm, you're standing for what's right. And that choice, no matter how small it seems at the moment, has the power to inspire change. Remember, injustice thrives in darkness. But even the smallest light, a single voice can start to push it back. The world doesn't need perfection or fearlessness. It needs people willing to act, even when it's uncomfortable. Your voice matters more than you know. Knowledge is one of the most powerful tools we possess. It can open doors, solve problems, and even change lives. But knowledge isn't just something to be hoarded. It's a responsibility. When you have the expertise to make someone's burden lighter, to offer clarity where there is confusion, or to provide comfort in a moment of pain, staying silent isn't just a missed opportunity, it's a disservice to both them and yourself. Marcus Aurelius said it best. What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. Your knowledge, your experiences, and the lessons you've learned aren't just for you. They're meant to be shared, to serve the greater good. And yet so often we hesitate. We tell ourselves it's not our place, that someone else will step in, or that we might say the wrong thing. But when we hold back, we deny others the chance to benefit from what we've been through, and we deny ourselves the fulfillment that comes from helping others. I'll never forget a moment when I learned this lesson firsthand. A close friend of mine was struggling with overwhelming grief after the loss of a loved one. I could see the signs: withdrawal, emotional isolation, and a heavy silence that seemed to follow them everywhere. I recognized it because I'd been there myself. I knew what it felt like to carry that kind of pain alone. At first I hesitated. I didn't want to intrude. What if they weren't ready to talk? What if I said the wrong thing and made it worse? But as the days turned into weeks, I realized my silence wasn't protecting them, it was abandoning them. So one evening, I reached out. I didn't try to fix their grief or offer platitudes. I simply said, I've been there, and if it helps, I'd like to share what got me through. That simple offer opened the door to a conversation they desperately needed. We talked for hours, not just about loss, but about resilience, healing, and the small steps that can help you find your way back to the light. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it made a difference. And it reminded me of something I've carried with me ever since. The experiences you've lived through, especially the painful ones, hold a unique power to guide others. The key to sharing your expertise or experiences lies in how you approach it. It's not about assuming you have all the answers or trying to fix someone else's situation. It's about showing up with humility and compassion, offering what you know while respecting their journey. A simple phrase like, "I've been through something similar. Would it help if I shared what worked for me?" can create a safe space for dialogue without imposing your perspective. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control. And here's the truth. You can't erase someone else's pain, solve every problem, or guarantee that your advice will be embraced. But what you can do is show up, extend your hand, and offer what you know in the spirit of service. That act alone can be transformative, not just for them, but for you. Sharing your knowledge is also an act of vulnerability. It requires you to revisit your own struggles, to open yourself up to connection. But in doing so, you deepen your own sense of purpose. You remind yourself that your challenges weren't endured in vain, that they now serve as a beacon for others navigating similar waters. I've seen this play out in so many ways, whether it's offering financial advice to a friend struggling with debt, mentoring a colleague who's unsure of their next career step, or simply being a listening ear for someone facing a crisis. Your expertise has value. It's not about being an expert in everything. It's about recognizing that what you know, what you've lived through, could be exactly what someone else needs. Of course, there's always the fear of overstepping or not being helpful. But let me ask you this. Isn't it better to try, even imperfectly, than to leave someone to struggle in silence? Marcus Aurelius reminds us that what benefits the hive benefits the bee. By helping others, you strengthen the bonds of community, build trust, and foster an environment where everyone feels supported. So, the next time you find yourself hesitating to share your expertise, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And what's the best? The worst is that your offer might not land the way you hoped. The best? You could make someone's path a little easier, their burden a little lighter. The Stoics often emphasize living a life of service and virtue. Sharing your knowledge embodies both. It's not about applause or recognition. It's about aligning your actions with your values, about being the kind of person who lifts others up. Think about the times someone's guidance made a difference in your life. Maybe it was a teacher, a mentor, or even a stranger who shared a piece of wisdom at just the right moment. Their words stayed with you, shaped you, helped you grow. Now it's your turn to do the same. What knowledge or experiences are you holding back? Who in your life could benefit from what you've learned? The next time you see someone struggling, don't hesitate. Your voice, your insight, your story, it matters. You never know how much impact a small act of sharing can have until you take that first step. If you are too busy to watch the whole video, click the like button so you can find the video again. Next, setting boundaries is one of the most powerful ways to protect your sense of self. Yet it's also one of the hardest. We often hesitate to draw those lines because we're afraid of how others will react, afraid they'll see us as selfish, cold, or uncaring. But let me tell you something. Boundaries aren't barriers. They're bridges tools for creating healthier, more respectful relationships. And when we stay silent as those boundaries are crossed, we send a message we never intended. That our needs don't matter. Think of boundaries as the invisible framework that holds your life together. They define how you allow others to treat you, how you prioritize your time, and how you protect your energy. Without them, relationships can quickly become unbalanced, leaving you feeling drained, disrespected, or even resentful. And here's the hard truth. If you don't enforce your boundaries, no one else will. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, captured this perfectly when he said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." Boundaries are a form of self-mastery. They're not about shutting people out. They're about teaching others how to treat you while staying true to your values. Let me share a story that taught me this lesson the hard way. For years, I had a relative who would frequently ask to borrow money. At first, I convinced myself that helping my family was simply my duty. I wanted to be kind, supportive, and generous, qualities I valued in myself. But as time went on, their requests became more frequent and the amounts larger. And here's what really stung. They never paid me back, not even once. I told myself all kinds of stories to justify it. They're going through a hard time. Family comes first. It's not worth the confrontation. But deep down, I knew the truth. My silence was enabling them to take advantage of my kindness. Each time I said nothing, I sent an unspoken message. It's okay to cross this line. Finally, after one too many requests, I decided it was time to confront the issue. I'll admit I was nervous. I didn't want to hurt their feelings or damage our relationship. But I knew that staying silent any longer would mean betraying my own values. So I took a deep breath and calmly explained how I felt. I told them that while I cared deeply about them, I could no longer lend money without accountability. I offered to support them in other ways, like helping them create a budget or finding additional resources, but I made it clear that my financial boundary was firm. The conversation wasn't easy. They were hurt at first, even defensive, but over time, they came to understand my perspective. And you know what? Our relationship improved. Setting that boundary didn't push us apart. It brought us closer. It allowed us to rebuild trust on a foundation of mutual respect. This experience taught me a powerful truth. Boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself. They're about protecting the integrity of your relationships. When you allow someone to repeatedly cross your lines, you're not just compromising your own well-being. You're enabling behaviors that can ultimately harm the relationship. Marcus Aurelius offers us a piece of wisdom that's especially relevant here. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When someone violates your boundaries, it's easy to feel angry or resentful. But instead of harboring bitterness or lashing out, the Stoics teach us to respond with integrity and confidence. Address the issue calmly, firmly, and with empathy. Let them know how their behavior affects you and what changes you need to see. The way you communicate your boundaries matters. A clear, respectful approach can foster understanding and prevent unnecessary conflict. For example, instead of saying, "You're always taking advantage of me," try framing it as, "I've noticed this pattern and it's starting to affect me. I want to talk about how we can move forward in a way that works for both of us." Protecting your boundaries doesn't mean rejecting others. It means affirming your worth and teaching others to value it too. And here's the beautiful thing. When you stand up for yourself, you inspire others to do the same. You create a ripple effect of respect, trust, and fairness. The next time someone crosses a line, don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it away. Take a moment to pause and ask yourself, am I staying silent because I'm afraid of their reaction? Or because I value my own comfort over my self-respect? Then summon the courage to speak. Remember, you don't need to be harsh or confrontational. Boundaries are not about punishment, they're about clarity. By standing firm with grace and empathy, you not only safeguard your own well-being, but also create the conditions for healthier, more balanced relationships. So the question is, where in your life are your boundaries being crossed? And what's stopping you from speaking up? The Stoics teach us that we are responsible for how we allow others to treat us. It's not easy, but it's worth it. You are worth it. Finally, mistakes are inevitable. No matter how careful we are, they creep into our lives, sometimes as small oversights, other times as glaring errors. But here's the thing. The real issue isn't the mistake itself. It's what happens next. Do we address it, correct it, and learn from it? Or do we ignore it, hoping it will quietly disappear? The truth is, mistakes don't vanish when left unchecked. They grow, like cracks in a dam, until the pressure becomes too much and the entire structure collapses. Correcting mistakes isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about taking responsibility, not just for our own errors, but for ensuring the integrity of the bigger picture. Stoic philosophy reminds us of the value of accountability. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacle, the mistake, isn't just something to avoid or sidestep. It's an opportunity, a chance to improve, to realign, and to strengthen. I remember a situation early in my career that taught me this lesson. During a team meeting, we were reviewing a report that was central to a major decision. As I skimmed the numbers, I noticed a small calculation error. At first, I hesitated. It wasn't my mistake. I wasn't the one who had worked on that part of the report. I worried about overstepping, about embarrassing the person responsible, about disrupting the flow of the meeting. So I stayed quiet. But as the discussion continued, it became clear that the decisions being made based on this report were significant, and that small error could lead to some very big consequences. I felt a growing sense of unease. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that by staying silent, I was complicit. It didn't matter that the mistake wasn't mine. What mattered was the impact it could have and the opportunity I had to prevent it. Summoning my courage, I spoke up. I pointed out the error as respectfully as I could, framing it as something worth double-checking rather than a critique. The room went quiet for a moment. My heart raced. But then, instead of defensiveness, the team shifted gears. We corrected the mistake, adjusted the decisions accordingly, and moved forward with a clearer path. That experience taught me something invaluable. Addressing mistakes isn't about creating conflict. It's about fostering growth. By focusing on solutions rather than faults, we create an environment where errors aren't feared but embraced as opportunities to improve. The key is how you approach the situation. When you address a mistake with respect and a genuine desire to help, you turn what could be a source of tension into a moment of collaboration and progress. Contrast this with what happens when mistakes are ignored. At first, it might seem easier. You avoid the awkwardness of calling attention to the issue. You preserve the illusion of harmony. But this peace is short-lived. Over time, the uncorrected mistake grows, leading to misunderstandings, poor decisions, and a breakdown in trust. By then, addressing the issue becomes much harder, and the consequences far more damaging. Stoic philosophy emphasizes that courage and accountability go hand in hand. Correcting a mistake, even when it's uncomfortable, aligns you with virtue. It's not about being perfect, it's about striving for excellence and integrity, even in the face of challenges. So, how do you do this effectively? The first step is to focus on the solution, not the person. Frame the mistake as an opportunity for improvement rather than a failure. For example, instead of saying, "You got this wrong," try, "I think there might be a small error here, let's take another look." This approach removes defensiveness and shifts the focus to collaboration. Next, remember that timing and tone matter. If emotions are running high, take a moment to pause and gather your thoughts. Address the issue calmly and constructively. This not only makes your feedback more effective, but also ensures that your intentions are clear. You're not there to criticize, but to contribute. Lastly, don't be afraid to own up to your own mistakes. When you model accountability, you create a culture where others feel safe to do the same. This isn't just about fixing errors. It's about building trust, fostering openness, and reinforcing the values that hold your team or community together. The next time you notice a mistake, whether it's your own or someone else's, ask yourself, what's more important, avoiding discomfort or upholding integrity? Correcting the error might feel uncomfortable at the moment, but the long-term benefits, stronger trust, better outcomes, and a clearer conscience are always worth it. Remember, mistakes aren't obstacles to avoid. They're opportunities to grow. By choosing to address them, you're not just protecting the integrity of the task at hand, you're demonstrating the kind of courage, responsibility, and leadership that inspires others to do the same. Isn't that a legacy worth leaving? Silence has its place, but as we've seen today, there are moments when speaking up is not just necessary, it's vital. Whether it's standing against injustice, defending your boundaries, telling the hard truths, correcting mistakes, or sharing your knowledge, each of these situations offers a chance to live with integrity and purpose. The Stoics remind us that virtue lies in action. Justice, honesty, courage, these aren't just ideals to admire. They're choices we make, day by day, moment by moment. And while speaking up can feel uncomfortable, even risky, it's how we grow. It's how we show the world and ourselves who we truly are. So where do you start? First, take a deep breath and reflect. Are there areas in your life where you've stayed silent out of fear or hesitation? Maybe it's a situation at work, a relationship that needs healthier boundaries, or a mistake that's weighing on your conscience. Whatever it is, commit to one small step. Speak up in that meeting. Have that honest conversation. Offer your knowledge to someone who needs it. Remember, it's not about being perfect or fearless. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Each time you choose to act with courage, you make it a little easier the next time. And in doing so, you inspire those around you to do the same. Your voice matters. Your choices matter. So let's take what we've learned today and put it into action. Together, we can build lives and a world rooted in trust, respect, and compassion. If this resonates with you, please like and subscribe to Daily Stoic Practice and share your insights in the comments. Your thoughts may inspire others on their own journeys to inner peace and resilience. Don't miss our daily videos, insightful discussions, and practical tips for applying Stoic principles to your modern life.